The night the sky burned. The wind shifted first, not the kind of breeze that came from the mountains or rolled off the sea. This wind was still, heavy. It carried the scent of iron and fire, of something about to die. Far above the capital of Ishinomura, the sky blushed red, not from the setting sun, but from the fire that bloomed within the palace walls like a second sunrise. Screams echoed between the stone halls. The imperial banners, white silk stitched with golden dragons, curled and blackened in the flames. Guards collapsed with blades still stuck in their bellies, their eyes wide in disbelief. Servants tried to run, only to be cut down by figures moving faster than shadows, silent, deadly, merciless. At the heart of the chaos, the shogun lay dying, a spear through his back, another in his chest, his lips still trembling with a prayer to gods that no longer answered. Above him stood General Hoshinaga, his trusted advisor, his war brother, now wearing the crimson armor of a traitor. "You should not have trusted men," Hoshinaga whispered, wiping blood from his cheek. "Dragons die, empires fall, and men like me remain." From the dark rafters above, Raikou watched, motionless, breath held, a blade unsheathed but unstained. He had arrived seconds too late. The world had already turned to ash. But the child still lived. In the nursery chamber, tucked behind the moon garden of the palace, a girl no older than 5 sat in silence. She held no toy, no comfort, only a bronze flute in her hands. Her eyes were open, though she blinked too rarely for a child. She had not cried when the screams began. She did not flinch when the flames licked the outer walls. She simply waited. Raikou dropped silently behind her, his black cloak still soaked from the blood of the assassins he'd cut down in the corridor. His mask, an obsidian carving of a flame, covered all but his eyes. And those eyes were tired, not weak, not afraid, just tired. The girl turned to him. "You're late." Raikou paused. She was supposed to be 5, but her voice carried weight, an echo of something ancient, like someone had hidden the voice of a queen inside the body of a child. "I had to make sure the path was clear," Raikou said, kneeling before her. "We leave now." "I know," she said. "They're here." Raikou turned, just in time to deflect the blade that came from the window, a blur of steel meant to cut through him in one stroke. Sparks erupted as his katana met the enemy's. A man clad in full red, a soldier of the Crimson Veil. Raikou twisted. One strike, a slash too fast to follow. The man crumpled to the floor before his scream could form. "We move," Raikou said. The girl nodded. She didn't ask where. She didn't cry for her father. She only gripped the flute tighter and followed Raikou into the smoke. The palace burned behind them. Through secret tunnels and forgotten passageways carved beneath the earth, Raikou led her into the underworld of the capital, where thieves, spies, and killers walked freely. But even here, something was wrong. Too quiet. Too many eyes followed them, but none dared move. Something about Raikou's presence disturbed the silence. He was not just a ninja. He was a myth cloaked in cloth. They whispered behind him. "The Flame Walker lives. That's the child, the dragon-blooded one. Is the prophecy real?" Outside the city walls, the world had already changed. Fields once green were now grey with falling ash. Smoke twisted like spirits through the trees. The wind moaned like the dead, but the girl walked without fear. Her steps did not falter. "How did you know I would come?" Raikou asked as they moved. She looked up at him, her face still untouched by soot. "I saw you," she said, "in a dream, before I was born." Raikou glanced down at her, at the eerie calm in her face. "You saw me? You were burning." That night, they reached the first refuge. A hidden shrine carved into a cliffside, masked by waterfalls and thorned vines. Only those trained in the way of ash could enter, Raikou's clan, now long gone. He lit no fire. He cooked no food. The girl did not ask for it. She sat at the mouth of the cave, flute resting in her lap, watching the embers from the capital drift into the stars. "Was he your father?" Raikou asked softly. She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at the flute. "He said I would never need a sword, that words could make peace." Raikou looked away. He was a good man. "But he was wrong," she said. Raikou said nothing, because deep inside, he knew she was right. As the moon rose, her eyes began to change. The pupils shifted, elongating, glowing faintly. Her skin shimmered for a moment like scales beneath water. The air grew colder. Raikou knelt in front of her, his hand on the hilt of his blade, not in threat, but in readiness. "What are you becoming?" he asked. The child raised her gaze to him. "I don't know," she whispered, "but they're coming." From the east they rode. 10,000 crimson soldiers, riders, assassins, war priests, and at their centre, on a black horse forged in iron, with a mask made of bone and a sword that howled when unsheathed. They did not march like men seeking war. They rode like wolves chasing one wounded flame, the last ember of the shogunate. The night deepened as Raikou and the girl moved through the ashwood forest, the ancient trees looming over them like silent sentinels. The forest had not seen the dawn of men in centuries. It was a place where time slowed, where shadows stretched long into the underworld. This was no ordinary forest, and Raikou knew it. This was the first true test of the Way of Ash, the path that had been buried in legend since his clan was lost to the fires of history. The path was narrow, winding between gnarled roots and forgotten stones. The girl Akihime moved with an almost unnatural grace, her small feet never stumbling over the rugged terrain. Her eyes, now gleaming with that strange light, saw the forest not just as a place but as a living, breathing entity. Raikou led the way, his senses alert. The wind had shifted again, carrying the familiar scent of smoke and ash. They had only just crossed the river that ran beneath the cliffs when Raikou felt it, a chill at the back of his neck. He spun, but there was nothing, only the hissing of distant leaves, whispering words he could not understand. "They're getting closer," Akihime murmured, her voice steady as if she already knew the truth. Raikou's grip on the hilt of his katana tightened, the steel resting comfortably in his hand. He had known this moment would come. General Hoshinaga. He was not one to let a victory slip through his fingers. His army, the Crimson Veil, had tracked them this far with relentless precision, driven by hatred, greed, and the desire to crush what remained of the shogunate. The first attack came without warning. Raikou barely registered the sound of hooves pounding through the underbrush before the figure leaped from the shadows. A warrior dressed in crimson armor, his sword drawn and gleaming under the faint moonlight. He swung downward, the blade aimed at Akihime. Raikou was faster. He moved before the strike had even begun. A flash of steel. The enemy's sword shattered on impact with Raikou's katana, the broken pieces scattering like glass shards in the moonlight. In a single fluid motion, Raikou's blade was at the man's throat, pressing against his skin but not drawing blood, just a warning. The warrior froze, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "Who sent you?" Raikou demanded, his voice low but commanding. The warrior's eyes flickered to Akihime, then back to Raikou, the fear in his gaze betraying the cold resolve that had driven him to attack. "General Hoshinaga," he spat, his words dripping with venom. "The Shogun's death will be avenged, and you will burn with the ashes of his empire." Raikou did not flinch. "You are already dead," he said quietly, then turned his blade and struck with surgical precision. The warrior fell without a sound, his body crumpling to the forest floor. Akihime did not flinch, did not look away. She simply continued walking, as though she had seen this before. Perhaps she had in dreams. "We move," Raikou said, his voice colder than the night air. He turned, motioning for her to follow. They did not stop. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees growing denser as they travelled deeper. Time lost its meaning as they moved. No clock, no sun, only the relentless forward motion. The ground beneath them shifted, roots rising from the earth like the hands of the dead, and the air grew thick with the whispers of long-forgotten spirits. It was then that the second wave struck. More figures, this time not warriors but hunters, cloaked in shadows and moving like wraiths through the trees. They were ninjas, but not of the old clans. These were the Crimson Veil's elite assassins, trained in silent death, masters of stealth and speed. Their blades gleamed with dark magic, forged in the heart of fire and blood. Raikou sensed them before they appeared. A shadow passed above. One assassin dropped from the trees, a whisper of motion before his blade sliced downward, aimed at Akihime's throat. But Raikou was there, his hand shooting out to catch the strike mid-air, his katana locking with the assassin's curved dagger. The clash echoed like thunder. Raikou twisted, disarming the assassin in one motion, sending the blade flying from his grasp. Without hesitation, he swept his sword low, cutting through the assassin's legs, sending him crashing to the ground. The other assassin was already behind Raikou, aiming for his back, but Akihime's small form shifted in the corner of his eye. The girl moved with fluidity, raising her flute to her lips. And then the sound of the flute, so soft, so pure, it cut through the tension of the fight like a blade. The assassin froze, his body trembling. His muscles locked in place, his mind clouded with a sudden, overwhelming vision. A vision of dragons, of power, fire, and destruction. His sword clattered to the ground, and he fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of Akihime's power. Raikou stepped forward, his katana flashing once. The assassin's head rolled from his shoulders, a final merciful end. The forest went silent. Akihime lowered her flute and turned to Raikou, her expression calm, unshaken by the carnage they had just caused. "They're all dead," she said, her voice soft but certain. "But they will come again." Raikou nodded. His instincts told him she was right. Hoshinaga would not relent until they were dead, until he had the child. The child who carried with her the key to the old power. Raikou wiped his blade clean and sheathed it. Then he reached into his cloak and retrieved the dragon's tear, a small, glowing stone that had been passed down through his clan's bloodline. It pulsed with a faint, ancient energy, one that could guide them through the night, through the ashwood. "Let's move," Raikou said. "To the east." The Crimson Veil's army was moving closer, Hoshinaga's relentless pursuit now more determined than ever. His war machine was unstoppable, and with every hour they spent in this cursed forest, Raikou and Akihime grew more isolated. The night seemed endless, and in the distance a new sound reached their ears. The howl of wolves, mixed with the crackle of flames. The hunt was no longer just for them. It was a hunt for everything that had ever been. And soon they would meet the one who would decide their fate. The wind in the ashwood forest did not follow the laws of nature. It twisted around trees older than any empire, whispering names no living soul should know. Every root curled like claws, every stone bore the scorch marks of something ancient. This was not a place one entered. It was a place one survived, if it allowed you. Raikou had only passed through it once in his life. That was before the war, before the fall of the Obsidian Flame clan, before he became a ghost. The trees seemed to lean in closer with every step he and Akihime took. The girl had said nothing since the ambush. She walked quietly, her flute now tied to her waist with a faded red cord. Her gaze didn't waver, not even as distant roars, animal but not quite natural, rumbled deep within the forest floor. Raikou didn't ask if she was afraid. He could feel it in the silence, not terror, but awareness. Akihime understood this place better than she should, and that unsettled him more than the howls. They reached a clearing by dusk. The sunlight barely touched it. Instead, a pale green glow filtered from somewhere unseen, illuminating the moss-covered stones arranged in an ancient pattern, a symbol from the old blood. Raikou stopped, his eyes narrowed beneath his mask. "This was once a training ground," he murmured, brushing his fingers over the nearest stone. "My ancestors trained here in silence for months. Some never left." Akihime walked into the center of the stones, her small footsteps stirring the dust of centuries. She looked up at him. "Will we rest here?" Raikou hesitated. Briefly. He knew better than to stay long in a place like this. The ashwood was alive, and the deeper they went, the more it watched. That night, as they rested beneath the strange trees, Akihime slept against a boulder shaped like a kneeling monk. Her breath was soft, steady. Her tiny hands curled beneath her chin like petals, but Raikou saw it, the twitch of her fingers, the shifting of her brow. She was dreaming. He kept his distance, but his senses sharpened. A breeze swept through the trees, and for a moment Raikou felt something shift in the air. The fire he had lit crackled unnaturally, casting shadows that stretched far too long. And then Akihime gasped. Her body arched slightly. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. Her eyes snapped open, glowing gold, faint as candlelight. She sat up slowly, her lips trembling. Raikou moved toward her. "What did you see?" She looked past him. Her eyes were wide, locked on something far beyond the trees. "There was a dragon," she whispered, sleeping beneath the world. Raikou froze. Her voice was not entirely her own. "I was walking on clouds, but they weren't sky. They were ash, and something opened its eye beneath me. It had no body, only fire. It said my name." Raikou crouched beside her, studying her face. Her pupils were no longer round, slits, reptilian. "Akihime," he said gently, "breathe." She did, slowly. Her eyes dimmed back to normal, and her body relaxed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," Raikou replied. "You saw what you were meant to see." Elsewhere in the forest, something else had awakened. Beneath a blackened oak, its trunk split from an ancient lightning strike, a set of red eyes blinked open. Then another, and another. In total 7. They belonged to a beast not seen since the end of the Flame War. A hunter born of ash and venom, one created to devour dragon blood. It moved without sound, slipping through vines and shadow, leaving a trail of rot in its wake. The ashwood fed it, protected it because it had been waiting for her. At dawn, Raikou stood at the edge of a cliff overlooking the Whispering Basin, a hollow where mist never lifted and echoes carried for miles. Below lay a narrow path, the only way through to the temple ruins where he believed the next clue rested. The girl joined him, her eyes scanning the mist. "What is that sound?" she asked. Raikou tilted his head. "What do you hear?" "I hear someone praying, but it's wrong." Raikou's eyes narrowed. There were no priests left in the ashwood, only echoes. Suddenly, the ground behind them cracked. Raikou spun, sword already drawn. And from the forest floor a serpent-like figure emerged, not scaled, not entirely flesh. It was made of ash, drifting like smoke, but its form held shape, like a memory refusing to fade. It had no mouth, only eyes, 7 of them, all burning red. Akihime stepped back. The creature lunged. Raikou met it mid-air, his blade clashing with the ash beast's form, not slicing it but disrupting it, scattering parts of its body in a swirl of glowing embers. It reformed instantly. The battle had begun. The ash beast struck again, faster this time. Its body rippled like smoke, yet moved with the force of a falling mountain. Raikou rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its sweeping tendrils as they smashed through a twisted tree, shattering the trunk into splinters. Its 7 glowing eyes remained fixed on him, unblinking, full of hunger. Raikou slashed upward, his katana coated in aura steel, designed to cut both matter and spirit. The blade sliced through the beast's midsection, causing its form to burst into a cloud of burning ash. For a moment, Raikou hoped that was the end, but the ash didn't fall. It reassembled. The beast's form twisted mid-air and reformed in a heartbeat. Now it towered twice as tall, its head brushing against the canopy above, its 7 eyes forming a circle around a glowing, pulsing core at its center. Akihime gasped. "It's not trying to kill you." Raikou glanced toward her. "What?" She stepped forward slowly, her voice shaking. "It's trying to consume me." The beast shrieked. A sound without sound, a vibration that hummed through the marrow. Birds erupted from distant trees. Trees bent away as if the forest itself didn't want to be near it. Raikou's body tensed as he took a defensive stance. His breath slowed, muscles fluid but coiled like a spring. He reached inward, not just for strength, but for the memory of those who had walked the way of ash before him. He whispered a single word. Emberfold. The katana in his hands glowed faintly red at the hilt. A runic flame etched into the steel flickered to life. Only one technique from the old way remained intact within him, and it came at a price. He launched himself at the beast. The world slowed. In 3 strikes he carved an arc across its form, one through the base, one through the midsection, one through the eye cluster. The beast roared and twisted, each wound flaring with brilliant orange fire as ash poured out like blood. But still, it did not fall. The beast screamed again, but this time it did something different. It split. Its body burst apart and reformed into 3 smaller entities, each bearing 2 eyes and moving with terrifying speed. One rushed Raikou. The other 2 dived toward Akihime. "Akihime!" Raikou shouted. The girl stood frozen. One of the ash beasts lunged for her, smoke forming a jagged spear from its own body. She raised her arms to shield herself, too slow, too late. And then the ground beneath her cracked. Flames erupted, not red, not yellow, but blue and white, blazing with a divine radiance that turned night to dawn in an instant. The beast stopped mid-air, convulsing as if struck by lightning. From Akihime's chest a symbol had appeared, a circle of runes, glowing just beneath her skin. Her eyes turned golden again, then whiter than snow. Her hair lifted around her head like tendrils of flame. She opened her mouth, but what came out was not her voice. It was a language the forest remembered. The two beasts shrieked in agony and began to unravel, their forms breaking apart like dust in a storm. One tried to flee, but was pulled downward into the cracked earth, swallowed by fire. Raikou finished the third with a clean upward strike, severing the head from its smoky body. Silence returned. The ash drifted through the air like falling snow. The 7 red eyes were gone. Raikou rushed to Akihime, who was standing still in the same spot, her eyes now dimming back to normal. She swayed as if the power had drained something from her core. He caught her before she fell. "Easy," he murmured, lowering her gently to the forest floor. She blinked slowly, her pupils now human again. What was that?" "You tapped into something deeper than chakra," Raikou said, removing his mask to look at her directly. "You called the ash fire." "The what?" He looked into the trees. "The last known breath of the dragons, a power buried after the flame war. We were told it no longer existed." Akihime looked up at the sky. "I didn't mean to call it," she whispered. "That's the part that scares me," Raikou said quietly. Later, as they sat beneath a large tree with hollow roots, Raikou cleaned his blade in silence. Akihime leaned against the trunk, watching him with quiet intensity. "Will they send more of those?" she asked. "Yes," he said. "Now that you've awakened part of your power, they'll come faster, stronger, not just beasts, people, assassins, old spirits." "Why me?" Raikou looked at her. "Because the blood you carry is older than the Empire. Because what sleeps inside you threatens everyone who clings to the old world." "And you?" she asked. "What do you cling to?" He paused. "I cling to what I lost," he said, "and the promise I made to the last Shogun before he died." "What did you promise?" Raikou looked up at the stars. "That I'd keep you alive long enough to change the world, or burn it down trying." Far to the east, General Hoshinaga sat inside his crimson tent, staring into the flames of his war brazier. A servant entered quietly and knelt. "Well?" Hoshinaga asked. "The ash beast has failed, my lord." Hoshinaga's eyes narrowed. "And the girl?" "She survived. The reports say she awakened something." The general stood slowly. His armor creaked, the bone-white mask resting on the table beside him. He lifted it, placing it against his face. "Then the war has truly begun."